Welcome to 10 at 10. My name is Michael Ramage. I am the director of the Cyber Education Research Center at Murray State University. 10 at 10 is brought to you through a partnership between Murray State University, Grow West, the Technology Council of West Kentucky, KY Innovation, and our local partner Sprocket Innovation in Paducah and the Kentucky Innovation Station in Madisonville. As I have mentioned the last few weeks, I wanted to spend a little bit of time at the end of the year talking about some of those annual reviews that we should all do for our organizations. Now, if you're listening to this, yes, it's December, and there's a lot of things that we think about at the end of the year. What did we not do this year that we should have done? So it's always a good time to think about those annual reviews at the end of the year because it's easy to talk about. But the reality is, many of these reviews that we're going to talk about happen throughout the year. Maybe it happens in the spring, it happens in the summer. I know some organizations that specifically do some of these in the summer, and some of these that specifically do in the spring. Um, I don't care so much when you're doing them, and that's really not the point of today's 10 at 10. My point today is that let's talk about some of these reviews, some of these security reviews in particular, that you should do on an annual basis. I don't care when you're doing them, as long as you're doing them, and that's the important piece. So with that said, let's dig into it and let's talk about a couple of these things that I hope that we're doing on an annual basis. First of all, security awareness training. Honestly, I hope that you're doing security awareness training even more often than on an annual basis, maybe quarterly, maybe monthly. Maybe it's a regular part of your organization. But at a bare minimum, I want you to think about security awareness training on a annual basis. The reason for that, and you're going to hear this over and over as I go through these items, uh, the security landscape changes every year. If you did security awareness training 5 years ago and not hadn't done it since, then there's a good chance that ransomware wasn't part of your security awareness training. Obviously, ransomware is rampant and it's only going to continue to grow. But whatever those new threats are, those new issues are, we want to make sure that we're talking to our employees about it. So doing that on an annual basis, at a minimum, is important. Reviewing policies and procedures. If we install new software, if we are adding a new business component, a new vertical to our business, then we need to have policies and procedures that make sure to address those issues. Actually, the security awareness training needs to address those as well. But specifically on the policies, we need to read through our policies every year to make sure that our policies and our procedures are truly addressing the concerns that we have, the controls that we have, the assets that we have. If things change in business, which they change every year, then we need to make sure that our policies and our procedures are changing as well. Assess and improve your security posture. So, what I mean by that is that if your organization is under FERPA or HIPAA or SOX or PCI or one of these regulatory type frameworks, then you may already be doing security audits or assessments. If you're not, then you should consider it. If you did a security assessment 5 years ago, and again, and haven't done it since, a lot has changed since then. So every year, again, this may happen in the summer, it may happen in the spring or the fall, it may not happen in December. But but every year we should go in, do a security assessment, look at things, see how they are impacting our business. Are our servers up to date? Is there a new vulnerability that we don't know about? Is there a new threat that we don't know about? Assessing all of those pieces and bringing those into our organization is a very, very valuable thing that is very easy for us to do. We just got to make the point to do it. And what really should happen each year is that our budgeting, that our planning, that our implementation should be driven by some of this assessment and review of our security posture. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the user access review and the testing, the disaster plan. But I want to say, as the title of this slide shows, when I say review and improve, when I'm talking about these annual things that we should think about doing with our business or with our organization, it's not it's not one of those things where, all right, we have all these things we have to do every year. Let's do it so we can check the box and move on to the next thing. Those are maybe they are to you, but all of these things that we do should be about improving the security position, the security posture of our organization. Let's make our business more secure. How do we make it more secure than last year? Well, we do that through looking at security awareness training. We do that by reviewing our policies and procedures. We do that by conducting a risk assessment or a security assessment or a security audit and addressing what we find in that. And let me add to that, and I can spend more time talking about assessments and audits if you want, but what we should think about in that is that it's not something that you, as the IT person on the team, do for the company. It's even best if you can get a third party to do that so that they have no bias, they have no knowledge of the organization or of the network except what is provided to them. And it can make it for a more um, uh, realistic assessment. It can make it for a more valid assessment, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. But a user access control or user access review, sorry. If a person leaves your organization, hopefully in the outboarding process, there is uh, a step where you disable the account. Probably not delete the account, disable the account. If you delete it instead of disable, you may lose access to some things that you need. But um, but I hope that there's a disable process that is in there. But what happens if a user switches from the accounting department to the sales department, or from the IT department to the marketing department? All of those things happen in a business every year, maybe every month, maybe in some businesses on a weekly basis. But what happens is because they're not leaving the organization, often those the IT staff, the security staff will add. So if they're going from accounting to sales, they'll move that account into sales, but they won't necessarily delete the accounting privileges that user has. So they'll add the sales privileges, but not delete the accounting privileges. So now that user who only needs access to the sales accounts or accounting privileges also has access to the accounting privileges as well. So they have more privilege than what they actually need. If that person then moved to a management role, then maybe they would get even additional privileges. The point of that is that we don't need all of that. For that person in sales to do their job, they don't need the accounting credentials. They only need the sales credentials, the sales group permissions. Um, so on an annual basis, it's a good idea to take a look at that, to review that, and try to make sure that we're not that all of the users only have the permissions that they need. I can go into more detail about that as well. If somebody has a question, drop it in the chat or send me an email, and I'll try to go over that more. But reviewing the users, the roles, the access, who has admin rights, who doesn't, all of those are important things to do, at least on an annual basis. And then finally, disaster response testing. So this week has been the last 7 days have been a true test. I mean, it's a real disaster for our region. There are so many that I know that have lost their homes, that have lost their businesses. This has been, with the tornadoes that ripped through our region, just a horrific thing. My home did not sustain substantial damage, but I still don't have power. Not sure exactly when that'll come back on. But the point of me saying that is that when I'm talking about disaster response, protecting lives is always the first thing to do. So, annually, yes, we should test our disaster response, but it is not the first and foremost is that we protect lives. And there's a lot of disasters that we're talking about from a computer cybersecurity standpoint that don't include what we have gone through this week. There's so many lives that'll never be the same, including my family, because of this week. And so this is something that's a little bit different. But on that standpoint, there's a lot of ways, and maybe next week I'll specifically talk about some of this, walking through these different types of disaster testing options. But there's a lot of different ways that we can test our disaster response. Um, and that's something that we need to make sure that we do because so many organizations service their website out of their uh, out of their company, out of their organization. All of their tools are within the organization. So if their business is without power, if their is without internet, then nothing else works. And that's not a great thing when there's a disaster. So I'll stop there and I'll come back and next week we'll talk about those 5 different types of disaster response testing options and we'll talk about what we should do on an annual basis. And some are pretty easy to do, some are more complicated, but we'll talk through that and kind of explain what all that means. So with that, thank you for joining 10 at 10 today. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll see you next week on 10 at 10. Thank you. Bye.